And so I want to provide a framework for helping you think about some of those differentiators. All right. I really have enjoyed Hamilton Helmer's work on differentiation and defensible moats. And he talks about 7 powers that create differentiation and sustainable competitive advantage. All right. And so the cool thing about these is it's not just for the Fortune 500, right? Every business owner can think about whether these powers exist within your business and also if they exist within your competition. And so very few, if any, businesses are going to have all of these 7 powers. But the cool thing is that even having an advantage in just one power can create significant customer value, which leads to sustainable advantage. And also by knowing where your customers have advantages in these 7 powers, you can choose to operate in a different power. You don't have to go head to head with them on the same one. All right. So let's run through these real quick. So the first power is scale economies. And you guys have heard of economies of scale for sure. And what I want you to understand is that you don't have to be a large business to have scale economies within your market and within your business. It could be as simple as, hey, I'm doing residential services. Maybe I've got cleaning crews for houses. And maybe it's as simple as, hey, if I have one warehouse on one side of town and one warehouse on the other, and I'm able to keep trucks on both sides of town in separate locations, that creates an advantage for me over some of the other cleaning companies that might be out there. So that could be one. The next is network economies or network effects. So Uber is a classic example of a network effect. The more people on the app, the more value the app has. I've been listening to a podcast on the history of Visa, the credit card company, and it's fascinating how they built that network because the more people that use it, the more value is created. So those are direct network effects. There's also indirect network effects. And again, that's similar to what we talked about before, where an indirect network effect is by creating opportunity, by having one opportunity, you can create complementary services around what you're currently doing that creates a network effect, makes it easier for you to do those other services. And that was for sure true with that exhibit manufacturer I mentioned. He was manufacturing exhibits, and then he realized, hey, I can help my customers store those exhibits. And that was an indirect network effect. Third is counter positioning. Understand how your competitors do business and position your business in contrast. Next, switching costs. Again, I'm going to use this client we had in the grocery store industry, right, where they're cleaning all the grocery stores for Kroger in the state of Colorado. That's a massive undertaking. And every now and then, probably about every 3 years, the customer, a new manager would come in and they'd beat their chest and they'd say, well, I'm gonna fire these guys and go with a cheaper group. And it's only facility cleaning. How hard can it be? Well, what the customer did not understand, and this new manager did not understand, is trying to hire crews in Aspen versus Vail versus Denver versus Colorado Springs versus Boulder, just extremely different markets and extremely different availability of labor and talent. And our client was the only one that had really figured out how to hire those crews and provide them what they needed in those different markets. And whenever the customer tried to fire them and go to somewhere else, in about 6 months, they'd come back and they'd say, hey, we don't have any cleaning crews in half of our stores. Can you please help us? Fifth is brand and in your brand identity. The reality is you don't have to be a consumer business to have brand identity with your customers. So think about that. Next is cornered resources. So again, do you know how to hire a certain type of employee better than anyone else? Another example, we talked to a business owner. What they literally do is they do compliance for gas stations in terms of carding people who are trying to buy booze and cigarettes. I mean, no joke, right? So they go in and they help those businesses by making sure that if their clerks are not checking IDs, that they can train them before there's a sting and they get in trouble. And so it's crazy, but these folks hire over 1,500 20 to 21 5-year-olds every year to test these store clerks in whether they're following the carding procedure. And other people have sort of tried to get into that business, but their competitors have not figured out how to hire these 21 to 25-year-olds. It's really, really hard to be able to hire them at scale. And so that is a cornered resource. And then lastly is process power, right? The way your business operates, does it create efficiencies? Some folks we know in niche industries, some of the ERP systems out there just don't really work very well for their businesses. So they built their own internal software tools to run their business. That's a significant opportunity to have process power.